Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley, and I am the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. What do you think is the biggest predictor of our happiness? According to a study conducted for over 80 years at Harvard, it is love. Full stop. But our brains can go into fear and other places that interfere with sustainable, loving relationships. While our brains have evolved to ensure we continue to multiply and increase the population of our species, those same brains haven't evolved to improve long-term relationships without assistance. Fortunately, my guest, Dr. Stan Tatkin, has the assistance all of us need. Stan is a couple therapist, a neuroscientist, and a UCLA Medical School clinical professor who has studied how our brains function and malfunction when it comes to love. His latest book, We Do, is easily one of the finest books I have ever read on relationships. Stan brilliantly weaves neuroscience, attachment theory, and so many other research-driven findings into a user-friendly and comprehensive model of how we love. His model, called PACT, which stands for Psychobiological Approach to Couple Therapy, can improve anyone's life and in dramatic and unforeseen ways. So join Stan and me as we talk about how you can increase your happiness through improving your long-term love relationship. Dr. Stan Tatkin, who has asked me to call him Stan, welcome to Super Psyched.
Thank you, Adam.
So glad to be with you. You know, several years ago, a colleague of mine who I hold in the highest regard said, I simply must get to know Stan Tatkin's work. And so I have. As a practitioner who helps people in relationships and as a partner in a meaningful love relationship, I feel a huge debt to you. You've made a big difference both at my practice and at my home. Over the years, you've developed a model that brilliantly weaves, among other things, the science of neurobiology, concepts from attachment theory, and a deep understanding of our autonomic nervous systems to assist people in relationships. And somehow, you've taken these complex concepts and made them super easy to implement. So to kick things off on a high note, I'm just wondering, what has been something that you've repeatedly heard from clients, students, or anyone else that has been incredibly useful?
Well, I think really from students, it's that this is fun to do and that they relax more in their work than they do otherwise. Spend less energy, work less, and get more done. And that's always good to hear, especially the fun part. With clients, I'm finally getting it. I'm finally understanding what it means to be in a two-person system, what it means to be fully collaborative and cooperative, because so much of the top part of what we do is try to get people to operate or to reorganize or rethink their relationship as a union based on fairness and justice and mutual sensitivity, on shared power and authority. And that's very hard to do with most people who either come from families where it was too pro-self and not enough pro-relationship, wasn't fair enough or just enough, or just don't have any idea that a couple union really is like all unions in a free society. It has to be based on a sense of purpose and mission and vision and so on. Otherwise, people will fight.
Absolutely. I want to bring it back to fun and parenthetically humor.
Yes.
One of the things that I love about you is you've got a great sense of humor. You and your beloved Tracy will engage in mutual flipping each other off as a form of diffusing because there's so much trust. But you bring levity, humor, and other things into your books. And a lot of people wouldn't imagine that couples therapy could possibly be fun or that humor would even have a place there. And yet you and I both know that people learn best when their brains are wired for humor. I mean, our brains are wired for humor and fun. Has that been consistent with your experience?
Well, people are funny. We take everything so terribly serious. And that's what happens when people accrue threat. It's life or death now. It's to the death. the things that people do, regardless of who they are, is funny because as human primates, we do amazing things and we do really stupid things all the time. Not because we're evil, but because we have brains that are really good at threat detection and going to war and recognizing dangerous situations, but not really good at staying calm and being able to think through stress. So that's why couples are interesting. They are getting into fights sometimes in very human ways, and they think they're the only ones who's ever had these fights. I'll be asked, we're the worst, aren't we? The worst are in prison. The worst are, no, you're people. People are annoying and people are disappointing and people are selfish and self-centered and aggressive and moody and fickle and opportunistic and always comparing and contrasting and coming up short and always aware of what's missing and being disappointed, xenophobic and racist. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Right. And one of the things that I love about the way that you explain in your book that everyone's annoying is it kind of just takes the piss out of the whole experience of our tendency to ruminate and imagine that we are the worst ones and going into a shame-based way of thinking, which causes us to shrink. And I'd like to just talk a little bit more about that, holding things lightheartedly and recognizing our shadow material and handling it obviously with respect and a modicum of seriousness, but at the same time, levity, so that it doesn't weigh us down. What are some of the tips that you have around doing exactly that?
Well, in terms of humor is a great leveler, unless the humor isn't liked by the other partner, in which case it's terrible.
Right.
They're just not funny. But humor between partners is always a good sign because that means there's flexibility in the system. That means that they can rough and tumble and not hit their heads and start crying and fighting, or at least they're sensitive, hopefully, to when it's getting close to that, and then they can clean it up. But humor is the great leveler and the great regulator if it's used properly. The problem, though, is that there are people who are humorless. But mostly the problem is that when people start to do what is natural, what is automatic and memory-based, they accrue threat if they're not careful. They don't understand that they may have misstepped, may have misunderstood, which is really common, and they didn't repair it. And this is a memory issue. And then people start looking more and more for threat cues. And then it becomes very serious. It's very hard for people to have a sense of humor when they believe their partner is ill-willed, unfriendly, threatening. And then it gets hard.
As you're talking about threat and the various kind of parenthetically, you're speaking to the portions of the brains that handle threat, et cetera, and how they are so not conducive to love, how they kind of can thwart and hijack our capacity to really step into love. I'm wondering if you could also speak to another brain function, and that is as it relates to attachment. You have brilliantly taken nautical terms and brought the theories of John Bowlby to the masses in very easy to grab ways. You've taken secure, anxious, and avoidant attachment styles and used terms of anchor, the wave, and the island to correspond with those three ideas. Right. And I was wondering if you could break those down and why it's so important to know our brains in this way.
Attachment theory goes back to the 50s. Attachment theory basically focuses on our fundamental existential need to attach to at least one other person for safety and security. Call it bonding, call it connecting, but it starts in infancy and ends with the end of our life. So as human primates, we are dependent on each other. That's a thing that's very hard in our culture to respect. In infancy and end of life, when we're helpless, we're dependent fully. But then we become interdependent. We become fully autonomous and we learn to interdepend on others. And that's what love relationships are supposed to be. So attachment is only about safety and security. It's really not about love. We experience it as loving or unloving, but basically how I move toward and away from you, how I respond under stress with your demands or expectations, how I respond under stress with your moving away or withdrawing from me if I feel abandoned. That has to do with my safety and security system as memory. So let's say you and I get into a relationship, and then suddenly I start to remember what it's like to depend on a person. And if I come from a family where the self was more important than the relationship, performance, appearance, and I was expected to not be needy, be independent, not be a bother, be seen, not heard, then I organize around this and I start to become avoidant, distancing, dismissive, and derogating of attachment values, right? I'm not as huggy and kissy, and I may be in the beginning, but as soon as I feel like I'm getting close, I start to distance because I'm afraid of losing my freedom and my autonomy. I'm afraid I'll be trapped. If I grew up in a family where I was encouraged to stay dependent and small and clingy because of a parent who needed me to stay nearby and was needy themselves, fearful of abandonment themselves, I will organize around that and I will start to remain clingy and at times avoidant in the sense that I'm afraid constantly that what happened in childhood will happen again. You will withdraw from me. You will be angry with me and punish me. And I will be unloved, unwanted. And so I end up doing a lot of testing of you to see if you really want me. I wait for things to come to me. I won't grab them. I feel under entitled. And that makes me threatening. So insecure attachment is really a memory of ongoing relational threat, relational trauma that is built into the culture I grew up in, that I adapted to. And I do that in my adult relationships to protect myself. But the way I protect myself looks and feels threatening to another person. And that's why it's more difficult to be insecurely attached in love relationships. It's just more complicated. It's still being an anchor, being secure is no picnic either, because people are the most difficult thing on the planet.
Definitely. And I love that you phrase it in such a manner that just, again, takes any sting out. And it seems as though we can really rock the relationship if we know who we are and know how we can get in our own way when it comes to love.
Yes. And know that the way we operate and protect ourselves is unfriendly to another person who is also depending on us. And that takes some self-awareness and experience. But then I also have to know you. I have to know the animal I bought and paid for, because I have to be knowledgeable about you and be a really good handler in a good way. Otherwise, I'm unfit, because that's what we want. We want to finally be with somebody who knows, understands, and knows how to manage us in a good way.
Well, speaking of knowing the other, you actually in Wired for Dating, another great book for anybody who's in the dating process or anybody who knows someone who's in the dating process. This is kind of a must read. But you talk about be Sherlock Holmes with regard to investigating the other, or just information gathering. I often see people come in, they are so excited. Everything's coming up roses because they're in that in love stage, but they are not really attending to perhaps deal breakers that have actually been shown because they're just so overflowed with the love potion. Let's talk a little bit about getting to know the other really well. How can we get to know the other, perhaps both in the dating and perhaps to someone who may actually be a stranger to whom we've been married for 20 years?
Well, it's attention and presence is the only way. And to be fair, in the beginning, where nature puts us on a set of neurochemicals, because nature cares only about continuation of the species. It has no concern for long-term relationships. We do. So there are all sorts of mitigating factors that are coloring our judgment in the beginning. And that, again, has a biological feature to it. It allows us to smell out, to feel out those who we could actually pair bond with and have children with. That's a whole other subject. It's fascinating. Of the ins and outs of nature, us selecting a mate that's way over our heads in terms of consciousness. But then we also pick each other based on recognition and familiarity. That's if we continue with that person. And so it's not an accident who we pick. They're stranger enough, but they're familiar enough to not be too stranger and not too stranger to where we feel too far away from home. And so that's how that works. So it's a little bit harder. And that's why we need our friends and peeps and everything to vet for us, because we're not good at vetting in the very beginning. But people can really learn how to read people by paying attention, I'm not saying asking grilling questions that would make anybody want to go away,
Right.
but people skills, which, by the way, increase our empathy scores. And when we really learn to read and watch faces and movements and take a look at what jewelry someone's wearing, what the perfume they're wearing, where their eyes go, how they're treating other people, even how they walk, how they move and talk when they say certain subjects. This is fascinating stuff. And it's really engaging. It's not looking somebody at askance, It appears as if I'm really engaged, but I'm really watching everything. And this also helps me not be self-conscious because I can't do both at the same time. I can't really observe you and be self-conscious at the same time. They interfere with each other. So that's that part. As we go along, it takes about a year to start to get to know someone. I'm sorry, folks. It just does. It's a time thing.
See them through 4 seasons.
It's just a time thing because we all want the gig. Let's face it. I'm not trying to bait and switch you. I'm just trying to get the job. So people have to give each other a break and understand that it takes time to really know the ins and outs of someone. And then even longer than that to really get to know how to understand this person deeply. Now, your other question, how do you get to know somebody you already know? This is a problem that everyone has to look at because there's a biological imperative to conserve energy in all of biology, in all mammalian life, in all life. Energy conservation is a primary law. Otherwise, we can't exist. So we do the least amount as possible as human beings. That means we're lazy. And we will automate anything that is new and that is novel. And that includes our partner. So soon I automate you, you automate me. And the problem with that is that I think I know you and I don't. I match you up with my memory that goes all the way back to childhood. And I begin to assume I know things and I turn my attention now to other new things. That is a feature in biology, in life, in the world. It is not a bug, but it is in romantic relationships because now I'm looking at other people. I'm not looking at you. I'm not as interested and curious about you. And the reason this is a big problem that everybody must know about is that the only way to battle it is to force ourselves, override the tendency to not look, to start looking at each other again and to start looking at details of the face, of the body, listen, really focus our attention and our presence, because that's how we fall back in love. And that's how we find the novelty in the ordinary. And as we get more mature, we start to understand that if we constantly look around for novelty, we never really find anything of substance. The way we find something of substance is we pick one thing, a partner, a career, and we focus all of our attention on that one thing and pour ourselves into it. And therein lies a universe of undiscovered detail. And that is how we continue to find the strangeness in our partner. And that's how you've told me as much. And that's what I do with my partner. That's what we do. And that is really the secret, is that we have these human processes that are there for survival. They're not enlivening. They're not deep. They're off the factory human capacities, which are very basic, very primitive. And if we only are off the shelf human primates, our relationships won't last.
Such a great tip in terms of finding the unique in the ordinary, just finding something amazing and going deep. And that we're not going to find it out there. We may live under the fallacy that we will, but we will be quickly very disabused of the idea that we will. Let's go to an idea that you have that I think is just so crucial for people to know about, and that is holding each other in our care. Previously, people might have thought of this concept within what you refer to as the couple bubble, another hugely important concept. And in spite of the fact that it rhymes and is cute in that way, it is by no means cute or corny. It is essential. It is as essential as the foundation of a house. But I'm wondering about the couple bubble as well as holding each other in each other's care. Could you speak about those two ideas?
In psychobiology, if we really study the human animal and starting with the infant, we know about how we're wired, how we're organized, and how we develop. And it is first and foremost face-to-face, skin-to-skin, eye-to-eye. And that is how we actually attach and bond with others. And then later on with ideas that we groove on and are excited about. And all of these things, when we're attuned with each other, we start to produce really groovy chemicals like dopamine, phenylethylamine, noradrenaline, and oxytocin, vasopressin, and so on. But that's the stuff that makes us want to come back and be with somebody. So up close, we are actually better at regulating each other than ourselves. And so the motion, and your audience may not be able to see, but I'm crossing my fingers over.
Mm-hmm. One is going over the other.
Yeah, this is how it all started, that it's more efficient for partners to be in each other's care than their own. This goes against modern psychology and modern popular thinking is I, me, and mine, or you, that I take care of myself, you take care of yourself. And while that makes sense in other situations, other milieus, in the couple, it doesn't work. It works better for me to regulate you and you to regulate me at the same time. And this way, we're like on a balancing bar. We're like on a tight wire. We are watching each other and we're regulating each other because if one of us goes over, we both go over. Totally. And that's a psychobiological fact of couples. They're tied together. If one goes down, they both go down. And this is a misunderstanding of how we actually work. We have to really care for each other. This would be like in service model. I fully serve you, you fully serve me. And in that vow commitment as an agreement for our survival and well-being, we actually get taken care of because we have the same things to gain and lose. So that's very different than the way most of us are organized. We're organized around our self-interests, especially under stress, and that's war. We have to understand that's a warlike stance. And in couples, in families, it won't work. It's too unfair, it's too unfriendly, it's too unjust, and it's way too insensitive.
You know, it's interesting. At first glance, somebody might misread the idea of the couple bubble or being in each other's service as being a codependent phenomenon. And it's absolutely not. It's how we are built. It is not diminishing either party of the couple bubble as codependency would, and so many other differences therein. I like your image of the three-legged race. If one of us goes down, we both go down. And I think that's really important.
May I shortly back up for a second and address the codependency because it's a common thing. I just finished a foreword for a colleague, a friend of mine, Rob Weiss, who wrote Prodependence. He, among myself and others, wished to do away with the term. I was there in the beginning when it was coined, around Pia Mellody and John Bradshaw and others. The problem with codependency, it was originally a term for the alcoholic and the co-alcoholic being overfocused on the alcoholic, overfocused on alcohol. And while that was a useful term at the time, it got co-opted by popular culture to mean a lot of pejorative things. And so codependent in its actuality is a one direction deal. I am working for crumbs, doing things without expectation of reciprocity. That's codependent. We're talking about an interdependent unit of two equals of equal power, equal authority, two generals, two bosses, two head of house, two executives. Both are expecting the same for each other. They're avoiding the same things. They're getting the same things, or there's trouble. So this is an absolute co-equal situation. And it is not a one direction, I'll take care of you in hopes you'll take care of me. That's an insecure model. It's not what we're talking about.
Couldn't agree more. And the term that I was using earlier was that neither party member is diminished.
And no baby gets put in the corner.
No baby gets put in the corner.
These are two bosses, two monarchs. You don't mess with them.
Yeah.
And they don't mess with each other. And if they fight, soldiers die if they're generals, right? This is a team. And the model of this would be more like in military. You know, if you're in the military, you're told you're not important. The person to your left and right, more important than you, they're going to save your life. Remember that. And if you don't drink that Kool-Aid, you don't make it very well. Everyone is looking out for each other. And that is how courage arises. I'm more concerned about my buddy than I am about myself getting hurt right now. I'm more concerned about my partner. They're more concerned about me. This is how we survive and thrive. It is an orientation cultural issue of interdependence, not codependence, and not rigid independence or dependence. And this is a hard thing for people to orient to because there's so many ideas out there that distort it.
Yeah. And just to back up that idea is the longitudinal study out of Harvard over the course of 80 years that basically said love is happiness, full stop. And to that point, that has implications in the military, as you just said.
Security is happiness.
Security.
Secure relationships is what gives rise to happiness, longevity, and good health.
Yeah, that was the big driver between two vastly different populations that were being studied. Harvard graduate males as well as males from Southie Boston, vastly different humans, same result.
And by the way, this still goes on now with men and women and children. It's now morphed into...
Oh, no kidding.
Still continuing today.
I knew it was going on, but I didn't know it was still going on with other demographics. Yeah,
it includes women and children, and
phenomenal,
generational. Yeah,
that's great. I'll have to check that out. That's really exciting. I got to tell you, Stan, we do this book I'm holding up right now. Maybe it's at least as good as anything I've ever read. It's one of the best books I've ever read on relationships. I don't know how you fit so much into so few pages, but you did, and it's incredibly readable. Let's talk about the thirds. I love that concept. What are thirds and how do they?
So thirds have been talked about in psychology for a long time. In this case, we're talking about primary attachment relationship, which in the human primate world is dyadic. So dyadic relationships exist in humans uniquely, even though we have polyamorous societies and cultures, we have polygamous. But even in those cultures, we find that there are primary dyad formations, two people that become primaries. Those are the go-to people, the people we run to when we're in the most pain, when we want to celebrate the most. We can't call everybody. We go to one person, and it usually is our primary. So in a primary dyadic relationship, a two-person system, there are thirds, third things, third people, tasks, objects, preoccupations, hobbies, whatever it is. Anything outside of the orbit of those two people is a third. Thirds exist. They're normal. Nothing, no problem. They only become a problem when one or both partners mismanage a third. It could be alcohol. It could be pornography. It could be a kid. It could be a mother. It could be an ex. It could be work. It could be anything. Candy Crush. I don't know. But what will happen is that when a third is mismanaged by a partner, the other partner complains of feeling sidelined, thrown under the bus, a third wheel, demoted. And we have to understand that there's a biological nature here that we can argue about, but we won't win it. We do not like having our position subjugated by another. And that's the whole idea of jealousy, right? I'm about to lose what I have. And so if people don't understand this, they can cause tremendous problems that may not ever go away and may end up dissolving the relationship because people don't understand. So thirds are best managed together. You and I manage thirds together. I don't go off in secret and manage it on my own. Everything is above board. The left and right hand knows what they're doing because we are governing each other and everybody else. We have to know these things. And so we're talking about relationship architecture as built by the two, that they're putting together something brand new out of whole cloth, a mythology, basically co-created by the two people. What shall this be? What is it based on? What is our culture, our ethos going to be? What do we do and what do we never do? These are our thou shalts that protect us from each other and everybody else. And so thirds are one of those things. If there's a third intruding, what comes first? Do one of us lose or does the third lose in that bid? Hopefully the third loses and we don't, because we represent home. They are outside. And that doesn't mean that they go screw themselves. It just means that there's a hierarchy here and we have to respect the hierarchy.
And when one of us loses and the third does not, trust is eroded, at least somewhat, if not perhaps substantially.
Yeah.
And I like thinking of a triage that my wife is more salient. And I think that people need to hold their partners as the most salient in their mind. And I love this idea of the right hand and left hand. I constantly use the term coordination with couples and with regard to relationships. And I often think that many couples in the service of their children, choose to put their children front and center on everything and forget about the couplehood. And it's tragic because the axis around which the child's world spins is actually the connection between the couple. The child is looking and feeling into, are mommy and daddy good, if it's a traditional heterosexual connection? And if not, what's going on? And I believe that the most loving thing that we can do for our children in many ways is be loving towards our co-parent, our spouse.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with your?
Yes. In fact, now that you mentioned it, we've just come out with a book called Baby Bomb.
That's
Baby
great.
Bomb. My co-writer, Kara Hoppy, and I, for just this reason, to prepare couples for the third that is about to come and to make sure they remain a couple in good standing, because this is not about the baby. Plenty of books about baby. This is really about the couple, creating a structure that suits them both, where they're in each other's care and they remain girlfriend and boyfriend or boyfriend and girlfriend. It doesn't matter, but they remain a couple because the baby is coming to their party. Children are passing through. We don't own them. And it's a couple exercise. It's a couple improv. It's a couple task. And if they're not looking at it that way, they will stop being a couple. And now they're just tools. Now they're just mother and father, which, by the way, is for the kid. Those terms are not for adults. And so we are concerned about people losing their way and dropping the couple, which should be the center of the universe, because the kids look to the couple as the earth, moon, and the sun. If they're not okay, the kids can't be. The kids will have to take over. The kids will have to shore up what is not secure, because their safety and security depends on the well-being of their parents. So parents have to be exemplars. They're leaders. That this is theater. We're showing, not telling, how to do relationships. We fight in front of you. We make up in front of you. We show you how we fall on our own swords, and we show humility. We do the right thing when the right thing is the hardest to do. That's what we show you. And that has to be there for real in the couple system first. Otherwise, kids will see, and then they will follow what they see, exactly as they see it.
And I believe that they will not just follow what they see, but they will non-verbally register, this is a scary situation. I am not safe.
Yes, by the faces they are looking at and the voices they're hearing. What children and adults do is something called social referencing. I look to you to see how to feel about mom. I look at mom to see how to feel about you. And so if mom looks scared of you, then you're scary. There are plenty of people in cultures that yell at each other, and kids are never afraid because we all yell.
Totally.
Nobody looks afraid, and nobody ends up in tatters. So all of it's really being watched very carefully by the minds that are watching them. And that's important because the child's development matters in what they're interpreting. But make no mistake, this is theater, and the parents are on stage and showing how we do things and what our relationship ethics are. And this then allows children to know what the rules of the household are by seeing it, not just hearing it.
Yeah, the kids are watching the theater on stage very carefully. Let's go to fighting, which you kind of referenced and to which you devoted an entire chapter. Can you speak a little bit about what would be some great guidelines for good fighting? Because fighting is inevitable. Fighting happens in anybody who's not a carbon copy of ourselves, even if we were carbon copies. But what are some good guidelines for fighting?
One thing to keep in mind is that everything that's going to be a problem will happen when either of you are under stress. So you may be great when you're feeling good, but that's no measure. The measure of a good couple is the amount of load bearing it can take without the wheels coming off. So stress outside, stress inside. As soon as we are stressed, do we revert to a one-person system of me, my, I, or you, or are we still talking collaboratively and cooperatively? I'm thinking of you at the same time I'm thinking of me. Most people are not doing that. So when under stress, you want to move fast. Time is of the essence. There's a tick-tock there because as you're in stress, your blood pressures and your heart rates are rising and you're getting closer to war. That means you have to move quickly, that you can only say what's important. You stick to one topic only, never, ever add another shrimp to the Barbie. You stick to one topic, you keep it focused, and you both have a vision, a goal of scurrying to mutual relief as quickly as possible. Take the matter off the table for now and go have lunch. Anything else is trouble. So this is a skill that people can practice. They can set a timer for 15 minutes. Sit down. Let's talk about any one problem. If we can't finish in 15 minutes, we both failed. Better luck next time. Try again. That's the skill. How fast can we get in and out of stress, solve a problem without working on each other? Problem is that people work on each other, never a problem. They'll be there for a very long time. As soon as I work on you, we're going to be here and we're not going to get anything. We're going to walk away empty-handed because we're unfriendly. So we have to understand we're animals, we're threat animals. If we're good at anything, we're good at picking up threat cues. And we're doing that whether we like it or know it or not. Respect that. You talk in a way that's collaborative. We, us, I think it would be better. What do you think if we did it this way? Rather than, I don't like that you do this. It bothers me and you always do this. Remember the last time? Don't go into memory. As soon as you're into memory, you're also in a tar pit. You're not getting out. Memory is bad. Nobody's memory is reliable. If you have to remember it, you're goner because you're going to argue about whose memory is right. That's for sure.
You devoted an entire chapter to memory and its shortcomings. And I've read this book twice by now, and I plan on reading it yet another time. Wired for Love, another great book, by the way, which I absolutely adored. It just informs so much of how I think about us as individuals within the context of a couple's relationship and, of course, couples. But I'm thinking about memory, and we could devote an entire podcast episode to memory and how it can cause things to run adrift in the context of couples' well-being. I think a couple suppositions, though, a couple basic offline discussions about fighting that couples could conceivably have. Like, let's talk about fighting when we're not fighting, like a few things that we need to assume. First of which is assuming positive intent. And let's both try as quickly as possible to externalize the problem so we can be coordinated against this problem together. And
you're a team.
Totally. We're going to fight this out. One other thing is this is kind of an artifact from the Wired for Dating, but one of my favorite diagnostics of all time. And this is, of course, something that requires time and money. But when in the courting phase, when really considering, will this relationship go the distance? I like the idea of traveling to a third world country together where things can go sideways, because I think it's a really good diagnostic in terms of predicting how do we coordinate? Do we blame each other when things go sideways? Do we team up? And what do you think about that idea?
Well, there's nothing like traveling that shows whether two people can work together under stress. Can we work together as a team and with zero knowledge, both of us starting from scratch, not knowing anything, under stress? How well can we find our way? How well can we read train tables? How well can we get in line on time? How well can we communicate with other people? How well can we get out of trouble? This is exciting stuff. Having said that, there's some people who do beautifully on trips and terrible at home day to day. And there's some people who do terrible on trips, but they're okay day to day. So it's a great measure. I think it's a great way of telling how well the couple can do teamwork. And if they're not doing it at home, then we could say, hey, wait a second, you guys are great there. Why aren't you great here?
It's a great point. And while no diagnostic is entirely conclusive, I would imagine when it comes to couples, there's something also about sorting through. One of the people loves to plan every minute of the trip and the other one wants to be spontaneous. And how is that negotiated? But let's talk about sex for a sec here. I love a couple of your tips. You kind of referenced it earlier, the idea of holding each other as if we are dating, even if we've been together for a long time, boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, etc. Right. Even if we've been together through hell and high water for years, decades, holding each other in this light. And you also threw out something I'd never seen before that blew my mind. Use terms of endearment with each other like honey, sweetie, but in the bedroom, use the first name. This was novel. Can you tell me about this idea of using the first name in the bedroom in lieu of out there in the real world and why terms of endearments are so good?
First names, when making love, are much more intimate because our first names are embedded deeply in the right amygdala and the left amygdala. And some people consider that the deepest unconscious. And so when we address our partner by first name, it is deeply personal for the person who's saying it and the person hearing it. I'm addressing you specifically. And when I do it outside of the room and calling you from another room, that can cause a fright or a shock or a startle, because the same area where the first name is embedded is also deeply linked in proximity, also close to the auditory cortex. So I call your name and it sounds like my mother or my father yelling at me, or I'm in trouble. So then it's better to use honey, sweetheart, and so on.
Totally.
And
from down the hallway, honey.
Right. Some people more than others.
Right.
But if my wife calls my first name sharply and it's not during lovemaking, what?
We all know we're in trouble.
It's a common error because who knew, right? And so, save the first name for your most intimate moments, because that's when it's extremely powerful. And especially if you are on the distancing side of the anxious and secure spectrum, it means even more, because the first name is hardly ever used. It's hardly ever me you want, you need me for something. There's a demand. I'm a performance pony. I've got to do this for you. It's not for me. That's what people in the distancing group tend to automatically expect. And so first names become really deeply important and personal and intimate. Yeah.
I love that tip. So my last question, Stan, if you had the magical powers to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill as it relates to being in a couple, what would it be? And what do you imagine the impact would be on the couple, on the individuals, and perhaps even society at large?
I went into this because I wanted to help children. I actually wanted to prevent pathology in children by working with caregivers and infants, but there's not a great audience there unless they're court appointed. So working with couples is the closest I can get to helping kids, because when couples are in good order and they're taking good care of each other, children show immediate changes. And the younger they are, the more immediate. So I consider secure functioning exactly what is needed for this time, in a time where we're all experiencing existential threats, upheavals, which have always been there, by the way. We're just aware of them now at this moment. It splits in our country that are divisive. This is a time for unions to go back to a vision, a shared purpose, a shared meaning, and where there is absolute agency among people who are joining together for those shared reasons. And that starts with a couple. The couple's the smallest example of a civilization, and it must be civilized. And that means unless it's a dictatorship situation, it has to be fair and just and sensitive at all times, not just when you feel like it, at all times. And that's a daily, throughout the day exercise in character and doing the right thing when the right thing is the hardest to do, and in keeping up your end of the bargain, because your life depends on your partner. You're unionizing in a world that doesn't care, indifferent to you, is hostile to you, is unpredictable, and mostly dangerous. If you don't know that already, then you're in some kind of other bubble. And people in other countries know this, and they protect each other at all costs. And they do that because they must. That's how we started to group together. We group together because as animals, we're not strong enough to deal with the vicissitudes of the environment and predators. We must band together, but we can't stay together unless we treat each other fairly, justly, and equally. And that's what I would say.
I love it, Stan. I am so grateful to you for taking time to meet with me. And thanks so much for...
You're so welcome. Always a pleasure. Love you.
Right back at you, man. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.